Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In the previous video we built the header of our marketing landing page, and today we're going to continue building out that page, and we're going to build these three components, this sort of intro block, this image and the footer. Obviously this isn't a full landing page, but it's going to give you a good idea of how to build components and how to include them on your pages and things like that. So let's get into it. So the first one we're going to build is this intro block. So there's two elements inside of here really, a text field and a CTA. So if we head back over to our code editor, we've got navbar and container in here. We're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it intro block. And inside of there we want index.js and styles.module.css. You can copy and paste the code from another component if you want, but there's not too much to write, so I'm just going to write it out. So we're going to call this one intro block, and for now it's not going to have any props passed to it, and it's going to return a div with the class name of intro block, and we're going to have a h1 that says digital marketing, services for your online business. You'll notice that I've put digital marketing and online business in span tags. That's because we're going to apply this bold text style just to those pieces of text. So span tags allow you to target little bits of text or smaller elements inside other elements. And I'll show you how we're going to style that in just a little minute. We've also got a CTA, so we're going to have a link, and we're going to just have that going to the home page for now, and it's going to say get in touch. Cool. And then we just need to export our component. There we go. So this looks really similar to any of our other components. We're just importing React, then we're making our component really simple, and then we're exporting it. So if we go to our page, we can now include this. We can actually get rid of container because that's not used anymore. And we can say intro block. So now if we return this, it's going to complain again because we don't have a single parent element, there's two. So we can just use these React fragments again, just to stop React from complaining. And if we look at our homepage now, it's saying that, so it's complaining because we're calling styles here, but we've not included the style sheet. So there we go. So now we're pulling in styles, although there's nothing in there. So for now, we're just going to add some really simple styles, just so we can see that it's working. We'll say background color green. So if we refresh now, we can see this is green, and it's pulling the intro block onto our page, which is perfect. You can see that it's all over to this side, so we're going to include a container, and we're going to do that inside the intro block component. So import container from container. So inside intro block, we're going to drop that down. There we go, that's moved over. We're going to say that the size is going to be small. So when it comes to adding things like variable sizes or things to container, or any component for that matter, we can do it this way. We can add in a prop. So the prop here is size, and we're passing in a prop, and the value of that prop is small. So if we go back to container, we can see here we're accepting the prop of children. But if we add in another value there called size, that property will get passed into the container for you to use later on. So what we can do is we can say, well, let's just console it for now. So console.log, and we'll say size is that. So if we have a look on our page now, and we open the dev tools, we can see here that size is small because we're passing that into that prop. So what can we do with that? So we want to pass that into here so that we can add that class of small to the container. Because we're using CSS modules, the easiest way and the sort of cleanest way to do that is to create a new component or a new constant up here. So we can say const container classes equals an array, and that's going to include styles.container, which you can see down here. So we're just replacing this, and then it's also going to include styles, and then we're going to enter the styles object, and we're going to look for the element with the index of size. So size in our case is getting passed in small, so it's going to look for styles small. So we can replace this now with container classes. Because it's an array, we need to somehow make it look like normal classes. So what we can do is JavaScript has a cool function, or a cool method, sorry, called join. So we can join all of these array elements, and we're going to have a space in between each one basically. So all this does is pulls all of these elements in, and every time one of them finishes, it's going to have a space. So what we're expecting to see is styles.container space styles.small. So if we look back into our code, we can look at container again. There we go. And you can see there's just one class on there for now. That's because small hasn't been styled. Although it's getting applied to the div, there's no styling to go with it, so it doesn't know what to do. So what we can do next is go back into this container styles, and we can say and.small. In CSS you can't do things like this, but in Sass you can. So this is just nested styles. So we're saying if it's got a class of container and a class of small, we're going to say max width is 760 pixels. And we can make a few more of these just in case we have any more layouts. We can say medium might be 1200, and large might be 1400. We can leave this default in here of 1400, so if you don't pass in a small, medium or large, it will always default to 1400. But yeah, that's how we add multiple classes to components. So if we look into it now, we can see that it's got the class of container and the class of small, and you can see here it's pulling in the max width that we want it to do. So that's great. The next thing we want to do is we want to style that intro block a little bit more. So first of all, we want things to be text align center. We want the background color to be that blue again. Just double check what our variable is called. It's called blue. That makes sense. So we need to import that variable file. There we go. And we just say blue. That's changed now. And then we're going to add some padding to this. So maybe 150 pixels top and bottom. That's looking pretty good. Maybe a bit much actually. Let's just leave it 100 for now. And then we're going to style this text. So let's give it a class of styles.intro block title. And then we're going to say intro block title is going to have a color of white, font family of Poppins, font size is going to be maybe 36 for now. Let's have a look at what that looks like. Cool, that's getting there. We want it to be a bit bigger though, so maybe 46. Let's give that a go. Cool, that looks about right. Next thing we want to do is add a font weight of about 400 or 500. That's going to reduce that down slightly, which makes it look a little bit more like this, smaller text. Then remember we added some spans inside of there, so we can say, using SAS nesting, we can say span inside of this, and we'll say font weight is going to be 900, which is super bold. So depending on whether or not we included that font weight within our Poppins import that we did earlier. So here we've only actually included 400 and 600, but we should be able to just do that to include 900 as well. And there you go, you can see it's super bold now. Maybe a little bit too bold, but it'll do for now. One last thing we're going to do is change the line height to 1.2 EM. EM is just a text font measurement in CSS, so that's gonna 1 EM would be the total height of one of these pieces of text. So 1.2 is just a little bit more, so there's a little bit of a gap in between. I think we can go a bit bigger on the font, so let's try 52. Cool, that looks just like our design now, so that's better. And the last thing we're going to do is say text transform lowercase. So that's going to make all of this text lowercase. So we could have done that in the hard-coded text, but it is actually better for SEO purposes to have the text as readable sentences, and then to change things like capitalization with CSS. So that's just a little tip for you for SEO terms, to keep things as readable sentences and then change them later on. Cool, so that's that. Next thing is the CTA. We're just going to borrow the styles for the nav, this CTA and the nav bar, because it's basically the same. So we're going to say CTA, we're just going to copy that. And remember, because things are locally scoped, we can just say .cta for this as well. So class name styles.cta, include that, and there we go, got our CTA ready to go. We're just going to add this lowercase text transform, just so it absolutely matches our design. That's something I missed out in the last tutorial. We'll quickly go back and do that for the navbar as well, but it won't take us long. So for the CTA, there we go. For list items, lowercase. For the logo, lowercase. And that should be everything. There we go. So we can see there's a bit of space above and not too much space below. If we have a quick inspect, we can see why that is. So there's a margin on the H1 itself. So if we go into intro block, we can reduce that margin. We can just say margin is going to be 0 top, 0 left, maybe 40 bottom and 0 right. And there we go, that reduces it slightly. Inspect it again, and you can see that sort of butts up against the header now, so that's good. Maybe we want to add a little bit below to make it more uniform, but we can worry about that later. Perfect. So far we've got a pretty good start for our marketing site. Next component we want to build is this really simple image component. So let's get into it. We'll call this maybe featured image, because it's not something you're going to include in lots of different places. So featured image, that's going to be, all of this is the same, we'll just copy and paste it, and it's going to be called featured image. There we go, dot featured image. There's a lot of repetition here, and we're going to keep a container. We're going to do that. And we're going to have the size as medium this time, see what medium looks like. And then what we're going to do is just grab an image from Unsplash. Just a random image, just so we don't have to look for one in particular, but we can maybe, it'll change every time and it's just easier for us. So we can just say image source is that, and the alt can just be test image for now. Cool, so if we include that on our page, we'll see what that looks like. I don't imagine it's going to look too good yet, but we can give it a go. That needs to be a capital, that needs to be a capital because they're components. And there we go, there is an image on our page. It doesn't look great, but it's there. So let's start styling this. So first of all, featured image is just going to be display block. And this is going to be a really simple component, so we'll just nest some styles in here because they're not going to be too many levels. And we'll say image, it's going to be width 100%, oops, height maybe 500 pixels, and we're going to use object fit here, and this just it makes the image sort of overflow in a way that it keeps its proportions and it still looks good. You'll see what I mean in a second. So we've made it 100% width, height is 500 pixels, but it's not squashed the image or manipulated the widths or anything. It's just going to squeeze it into the box and make it look proportionately correct. Yeah, object fit cover is a really useful tool. So we'll just make that a little bit bigger, and that's probably close enough to our design. Yeah, that'll do for now. We're going to add some border radius, so what we can do is just look at our CTA and just see what border radius we're using here. So it's 5 pixels, and that means we can keep the website nice and consistent. So we'll say border radius 5 pixels. There we go. You'll notice now that this image actually pushes up slightly, and that's fine. What we're going to do is we're going to say image is going to be position relative, and we're going to have it a margin top of minus 100 pixels, and that's going to pull the image out of the sort of context of the layout and pull it up slightly. So obviously that's pulled it up now against the intro block, so we just need to edit that slightly. So we're going to say intro block, so we've got 100 pixels top, maybe 200 pixels bottom. Have a look at what that looks like. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. That's sort of similar to our design, maybe a bit more, so we'll give it 250, and then we'll say this is going to be minus 150. Cool, yeah, that's looking good. One thing you'll notice is that in our design, this section has a light blue image. So what we can do is copy this image, but we'll just guess for now. I don't have Photoshop open, so rather than wait for that, we'll just guess it's just a light blue. Doesn't matter what it is. We'll make a new variable called light blue. We'll just put in some random colours for now, and then we'll change it. So we're going to have a really light blue all the way up there. Cool, so featured image, we can now say background colour is going to be that with one of them. Refresh, and you see we've got a nice light blue. Perfect. Last thing we want to do is add a padding bottom of maybe 200 pixels, and that's just going to give us this space down here. So because we made this 100% of the width responsively, that's going to work really well. And because we're using a container, there's always going to be this little padding at the side. And as you can see, as we make the image, the page smaller, the image scales proportionately. So that's why object fit is a really good way to include images. And it's not like using a background image. It behaves in the same way as a background image, but in the DOM there's a real image there with an alt tag, which is really good for SEO and accessibility. So yeah, I suggest you do that. Cool, so that's 2 out of 3 components done. Last one then is the footer, which is really simple. We're just going to copy and paste the navbar, and we're going to call this one footer. We can get rid of everything inside here, and we can replace that and that with footer lowercase, and that with footer uppercase. Cool, so basically we've got our footer outer div. We can actually use the HTML5 footer element. Then we've got a container just to keep that layout consistent. Then we've got a footer inner because we're going to use flex on here. So we've got two elements that we want to flex away from each other. So inside here we'll just say that is the HTML entity for the copyright symbol, really simple. And we're going to say we need to get the year, so there's tons of ways to do this, but I just Google it. Get current year. It's something that I Google all the time. So it's a really simple little function that we can use here. So we get the date and then we get the year from there. We're going to create a constant called year, and then we're just going to include that as a JSX element. So it's going to say copyright year, or we want our business before that. So your business, and then we're going to have another p tag with an a tag inside of it, and this one is just going to say made by you. So this is, a link to your website or whatever it might be, but that's how we're going to include that link. Cool, so on the page then, last thing we need to include here is the footer. Down here, and there we go. Now if we look at our page, we've got our footer. It doesn't look great, but we'll fix that in 1 second. Open up the footer styles, we can say .footer is going to be display block. Background color is going to be blue. And we're going to have a really small padding of maybe 30 pixels top and bottom. There we go. Then we've got footer inner. And that's going to have a display of flex. It's going to have justified content, and it's going to be a space between. Line items is going to be center, and flex wrap is going to be wrap, just in case they ever come into contact, they'll jump onto the next line. So you can see now these are being pushed apart. That's by justify content. And then in here we're just going to style our p tags. We're going to say color is white, margin is 0. Excuse me. Font size is going to be 14 pixels because it's not really important information. Font family is going to be Poppins, like everything else. There we go. That's sort of as we want it. There's maybe a bit more padding we can add, but that's almost there. Text transform lowercase. There we go. Footer, let's maybe add this to 50 then. Cool, that'll do. You see over here our link isn't quite working, and that's because links are slightly more specific. So we need to say color inherit and text decoration none, and that makes it look just like the p tag. Amazing. So that is your first ever Gatsby website sort of done, the desktop version anyway. And we're going to leave it there for today. In this episode we have created this component, which is an intro block. We've added this image component, and we've also added a footer. And that's where we're going to leave it. In the next episode we're going to make this website responsive. We're going to look at adding new pages and maybe talk about CMSs and how we could integrate content into here. But yeah, that's it for today. So thank you for watching, and tune in next time for the next episode. See you later.